Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. Over the past 7 years, we've understood what matters most to you, the entrepreneur. And in year 8, we're taking head-on 2 of your most pressing concerns, that of funding and mentoring. I'm Sananda Jayaseelan. On the show tonight, an exclusive sit-down conversation with globally renowned entrepreneur, philanthropist and Padma Shri Romesh Wadhwani. In a slice of an interview that Chief Editor IP's Mihir Bhatt did with him, Romesh has spoken about his journey from IIT Bombay to Silicon Valley, also about why he's felt the need to give back to the entrepreneurial ecosystem through his many initiatives, including Wadhwani Takeoff, Wadhwani Advantage, as well as Winning Pitch. Take a listen.
No one is paying attention to the fact that to make an incubator really successful, it isn't the land, it isn't the buildings. It's the leadership of the incubator. It needs to be very entrepreneur friendly. It's the project management support that needs to be provided by the incubator to the 50 or 100 entrepreneurs.
I want to speak about your journey also, because that itself is very exciting and encouraging. So after starting from IIT Bombay and all the way up to Silicon Valley, how was your experience? Because your success ratio is 41 out of 42 companies or ventures that you floated are really successful today. So if you can take us back in time at the beginning, how did it all start?
So it's kind of hard to explain in some sense, because I don't come from a family background of entrepreneurship or business. So I come from a family where, my grandparents and others in the family were teachers, were doctors. My father was a banker. He worked for a bank that got acquired by Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, but there were no entrepreneurs or businessmen. I went to IIT Bombay, and it was almost instinctive. In my first year in Hostel 2 at IIT Bombay, I'd come home, walking 1 mile from the electrical engineering department back to Hostel 2. I'd be there by 4 o'clock. Dinner was not going to be served till 7:30. I was tired, I was hungry, I was thirsty. I'd love to have had a Coke or snacks or biscuits or something, not available. So I thought, okay, maybe there's an opportunity to build a canteen, because there was no canteen. I talked to a couple of friends, and we decided that an initial investment of 100 rupees was required to buy the initial inventory that would get the canteen off the ground. So it was a bootstrap operation.
This was when? Which year?
This was in 1970.
Okay.
By the way, India was socialist in those days, and I'll tell you why that becomes an important part of the story. And so 10 of us put 10 rupees each, which was the loose capital that we had available, started the Canteen Corporation of Hostel 2. Immediate hit, because we were serving a critical need. Every student coming back needed Cokes, Pepsis, biscuits, etc. And at the end of the first year, we declared a 10,000% dividend on the 100 rupee initial investment. So needless to say, we were very happy. And this canteen experience, you can call it a college entrepreneurship experience, but with no mentors and no support systems, anything, it kind of stuck. And I just felt that life working for a large company would be boring as hell. And I was willing to take the risk. Now, keep in mind, I still didn't have US passport. I had no capital. I had no business experience. I had everything going against me. But I decided to start a company, which became CompuGuard Corporation, my first company, basically software for energy management in buildings. Very tough journey, because I needed $100,000 of capital. I called on 125 venture capital firms all over the country. New York, there were none in Pittsburgh. West Coast, South, North, you name it, I was there. And first 124 said no. So another lesson I learned as an entrepreneur was you have to accept a lot of rejection. In this case, it was rejection from VCs, but I know other entrepreneurs may face rejection from parents, friends. Are you crazy? Why do you want to start your own company? You face rejection from customers, right? No customer is obligated to buy your products. You face rejection from investors. The key is that's all part of the journey. So long as you have passion, you have conviction, you believe in your ideas, you just go for it. And the fact that you get knocked down 124 times, you just pick yourself up and you keep going. So I got the capital with the 125th, built a company which grew to about $8-9 million. It was acquired by a very large European company called ABB for about the same price, so about 1 times revenue. It wasn't a unicorn. There were no unicorns in those days. And this is now around 1981. And so in some sense, it was a good success for that time in that place in Pittsburgh. And then I built my second company. So the Rockefeller family found out that I had built this first company. They owned a company called American Robot, which is a robotics company, 7 people. And they asked me to take it over, and I bought 25% of the company and started running it. And within the first year, because of the reputation I was beginning to build, I raised $43 million of venture capital. Now, back in '81, $43 million was a serious sum of money. But also, at the end of the first year, I concluded that the business model of the entire robotics industry in the entire world was completely flawed. Because everyone was selling robots below manufacturing cost to try and get market share. But when everyone does that, essentially no one either gets market share or profits. So you end up achieving no useful business model goal. And yet I had raised the $43 million, and it was a matter of choice for me. One choice was, okay, give them 1 year's notice, tell them that this was a bad idea, robotics not going to be a successful outcome. I've done the best I can. Sorry, right? That was one approach. The other approach, which is the one I took, was to try and get them out as close to whole as possible. So I spent 9 more years transforming the company from a robotics company to a computer-integrated manufacturing software company. And I didn't get them out whole, I got them out partly whole, but a lot more than zero. Now, if you look at it from my personal perspective, it was 10 years, literally 90 to 100 hours a week, no vacations, and I came out of it with $600,000, less than I made in my first company.
Right.
You do the math, turns out to around $13 or $14 an hour. So a good argument could be made that I could have been working at McDonald's or at Marriott Hotels as a front desk clerk, and probably I have come out even from a purely salary or outcome standpoint. But I learned 2 things, right? The power of integrity. The 9 years were all about integrity. They were not about financial gain. I knew I would never get anything significant out of the company. It was all about trying to get the VCs out whole. I think that message is often lost among entrepreneurs who are in a rush to get rich quick. And my advice to those entrepreneurs is build a great company and the rewards will come. They always do when you build a great company. If you don't build a great company, you may in fact get rewards because you might be lucky or you might pick the timing right, but you're not going to be a great entrepreneur for the long term. You might be a one-shot wonder. You are not going to be a sustainably good, high-quality entrepreneur. The lessons that I learned, the scars that I got on my back, were absolutely instrumental in the rest of my journey going forward. So my biggest learning experiences came from my failure rather than my success. So if you think of my first company kind of as a sort of mediocre success, the second company is a kind of middling failure. It wasn't a catastrophic failure. There was no bankruptcy. There was, the customers still loved us. They still do business with all the other companies I've built in the future. But I didn't feel like it was a success. That's why I don't call it a success. Other people might have said the man did the best that anyone could have done in a particularly screwed up robotics industry. But then the third company I started, which was Aspect Development, which was the first of its kind of companies creating big data for the supply chain, combined with enterprise software, and that became very successful. That also was a 10-year journey, and that got acquired 10 years later in the year 2000 for $9.3 billion, which at that time was the largest software acquisition ever done. But when I look back as to why I was successful there, it was all based on the lessons I learned at my, American Robot call it mediocrity or failure or however we choose to characterize it. One of the things I concluded very quickly, literally within days, is that once you become an entrepreneur and it gets into your blood and you have this passion for entrepreneurship, you cannot stop.
Right.
Your DNA has been corrupted forever. It has been mutated. Nothing can change it. So then the question was, one company or multiple companies? Do I do another startup or do I build a group of companies? And I thought, I've done 3 startups, 10 years each, learned a lot, had a really good success in the third one. Time to do a group. So I set up Symphony Technology Group in 2002. Over 16 years, I built the group to 33 companies, invested a total of around $1.5 billion. We've delivered enterprise value so far of about $12 billion. So it's been a very, really enjoyable journey for me, intellectually, professionally, operationally, and I might add financially as well. But certainly on the strategy and operations side, every morning when I would wake up, 5:30 or 6, there were 4 or 5 companies that needed my help. Most cases, they knew they needed my help. In some cases, I was thinking ahead of them. I might have been thinking 3 months ahead of them or a year or 2 years ahead of them because of my experience. And in every company, or I should say almost every company, certainly 28 or 30 of those 33 companies, I was the executive chairman, and I played a very active role in setting their values, in building their customer relationships, in driving their innovation programs, and helping them build a high-performance organization. So I look back 16 years, I looked back 16 years later, this was around 2017, and I felt that it was a great journey because we took 33 companies to scale, made them leading companies, very innovative companies, growth companies, all the things I talk about in my foundation. I actually practiced across 33 companies over that 16-year period. But then that was another moment of truth for me, right? 2017, I'm now 70 years old. We know in India at 70, a lot of people decide time to retire, time to do this, time to do that. So looked in the mirror, I said, okay, observation number 1, the genetic mutation that has caused you to be a serial entrepreneur continues, therefore you cannot stop as an entrepreneur. And number 2, retirement is not in the cards. So I'm going out with my boots on.
Yeah.
So since those are not the choices that I could live with, I said, okay, done 33 companies with one particular kind of model of growth, time for a new model. So what's that new model? Start with artificial intelligence. I think everyone knows sort of what artificial intelligence is. Everyone knows that the B2C platforms like Amazon and Google and Facebook and Alibaba all use AI intrinsically in their marketplaces and platforms. But on the other hand, AI has not been widely deployed in business.
Yeah.
So I thought there was an opportunity for me to build an exciting new group of companies that would focus on transforming business with advanced AI solutions. So I started Symphony AI Group in 2017. I committed $1 billion of my own capital to go build it, so I didn't want to go raise capital from anyone else. In that journey, I also decided I had to build 15 companies as a minimum in the group. And secondly, that each company had to be scaled up to at least $100 million in revenue. Otherwise, it wasn't a particular proof that the business was really relevant and the business was really adding a lot of value to the ecosystem. Now the question is, why 15 companies? And it really comes down to the fact that, as I mentioned, I had done 3 startups, 10 years each. Then I did 33 companies over the next 16 years. That's 36. When you get to 36, you have 3 choices. Do you want to do 37, 40, or some other larger round number? 40 just seemed like not enough of a stretch if you're at 36. So I set my lifetime goal at 50. So that then meant I had to do 14 more companies. Hence the goal of Symphony AI Group needing to do 15 companies, each of which gets to scale. And on the good news side is I'm at 7 right now. Our 7 companies have gone in 3 years from startup to about $350 million in revenue. My hope is over the next few years that I'll fill in the other 8 I'll take these to scale, and then the group as a whole hopefully will be doing a few $1 billion a year in revenue. Now, the good news for our foundation is that a long time ago, I made a decision that I was giving away most of my net worth to my foundation. The foundation, in turn, is focused on helping accelerate economic growth and job creation in the emerging economies, with India right at the core. So in a sense, I think of myself as a recycling agent. On one side, I'm running a group of companies trying to produce wealth. Goes back into the
Giving
foundation.
it back, yeah.
I give almost all of it away.
Let's slip into a short break on this exclusive conversation with Romesh Wadhwani. Much more on the other side. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow tonight, continuing to bring you an exclusive sit-down conversation with globally renowned entrepreneur, philanthropist and Padma Shri, Romesh Wadhwani.
There is one thing which now in hindsight you feel you should have done differently or you could have done differently. What would that be?
I would say it would go back to my American robot experience, just not enough attention to the details of the marketplace, the competition, and the customer. So let me answer the question slightly differently, right? If you look at the 42 companies that I have done so far, including the first few that I've done at Symphony AI Group, all but one. So in other words, 41 out of 42 have been successful. And I define success to mean they have achieved growth, they have achieved profitability, they have very satisfied customers, they have high net promoter scores from our customers and our employees, and they have returned good, great, or truly dramatic outcomes to the shareholders, of which obviously I'm a major shareholder. There are really only 4 common themes that run across all these companies. So if I was to answer the question by saying, what are some of the things entrepreneurs should be thinking about to improve their odds of building a successful company? There are all the obvious things which I will not spend time on. Know the market, know the competition, think through the business model, think through the obstacles that you're likely to face, think through what your sources of capital might be. So all those are just sort of plain vanilla, absolute must items on a checklist. But that by itself is not enough to build a growth company or build a company that can scale successfully. And obviously lots of people have written books about how to build good companies, how to build great companies, but I've narrowed it down to just 4 simple things. And I've then implemented these 4 simple principles in every single company I have touched. First of these is deliver the highest possible value to customers all the time. That means you need to understand customers. You need to understand what your value proposition is. You need to understand how you're going to deliver that value proposition. You need to understand how you're going to keep increasing it. It sounds very simple, but when you get down to it, it is really, really complicated because you really need to be very closely engaged with customers and think all this through extremely carefully. So beyond the first 2 companies and possibly even the 3rd company, every single company after that, I've been the most customer-centric entrepreneur, CEO, almost anywhere. Now, there are people better than me, just to be clear. They have achieved more success than me. But I've achieved it across a larger number of companies, perhaps, and there's been consistency to my approach. The second thing is innovation. I have a simple belief that a company that does not keep innovating is ultimately dead, even if they don't know that they're going to be dead sometime in the future. Because you can never anticipate when you're going to be disrupted, right? Everyone's being disrupted. Some people are being disrupted today. Some people may not be disrupted for 10 years. I can't think of a single company in any sector, tech, non-tech, financial services, retail, makes no difference, that sooner or later is not going to be disrupted. And the question is, do you want to be ahead of the curve? Do you want to be behind the curve? Right. If you want to be ahead of the curve, you've got to innovate like crazy. Now, obviously, you got to balance that investment in innovation in your business model, but it's got to be a core part of your DNA. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. There are too many excuses for not investing in innovation, but that's the second. Third is attracting and retaining great talent. The talent you need comes in different forms depending on the nature of the business you're in. Everyone doesn't have to be a technology genius. Everyone doesn't have to be an AI superstar. Everyone doesn't have to be a SVP of this and a EVP of that. But in the rank and file of any organization, you need talent about the customer, about the domain, about the products, about the ability to deliver those products, about the ability to support, about the ability to operate, the ability to raise capital, all these things. The more talented the organization you have, the greater your chances of success. So I spend a lot of my time, even today, recruiting talent. In a typical week, where I might work maybe 70, 75 hours on Symphony AI Group, an additional 10 to 15 hours on the foundation, I would say probably I would do maybe 6 to 8 interviews. Because in each of our companies, first level, second level, third level, for the finalist or the semi-finalist, I'd like to either meet the person or talk to that person on the phone, because then I can share my experiences with the leadership team of the company. They get to make the final decision, because every one of my companies has a CEO and a complete leadership team. But on the other hand, not everyone has 45 years of experience, the same scars on the back that I do, the same knowledge that I may have gained. So that's the third. And then the fourth is creating a high performance culture. Setting high expectations, stretch but achievable, having a very detailed operational plan for how those outcomes or those KPIs can be achieved, and then having a relentless focus on brilliant execution of the strategic agenda. People can be great at strategy, but if they're not great at execution, companies fail. Right. People can have a third-rate strategy with great execution. They will at least build a mediocre company. They won't build a bankrupt company. So I've always been a believer that you really, yes, strategy is important, customer centricity is important, innovation is important, but brilliant execution of the operational plan is what makes the difference between winners and losers. And then finally, passion and intensity. And I just feel that great entrepreneurs also are very passionate, and they are round the clock in terms of the strategy and particularly the execution of that strategy. So
that was very inspirational, and I hope people who are watching this interview will also get inspired. Thank you so much for joining us, Ramesh.
Thank you.
Thank
yes,
you.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's all we could pack into this episode tonight. If you have any feedback for us, do let us know. We are all ears. Our contact details coming up on your screens in just a moment. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.